harder to kill him, it says in verse 18. Not only was he breaking the Sabbath, but he was even calling God his own Father, making himself equal with God. Now, I guess it's pretty obvious that he claimed to be God, right? And the people understood that he was claiming to be God, because what did they want to do? They wanted to kill him. They say, well, why are you stating the obvious? Well, because there's a really strong segment in our society today, and it's very vocal, that they will do anything to set forth the idea that Jesus never claimed to be God, never thought he was God, and that this was something that the Christian church foisted upon the world centuries later. And it's just not true. The one who was closest to Jesus in this world, John, recorded these words. And over and over and over again, he said, Jesus is God. We live in a society today that talks a lot about God, but never in specific terms, right? You talk about a God, and people say, well, I believe this about God, and everybody says, well, that's cool. Not true for me, but if you want to believe that, that's fine. And then somebody else says, well, I believe this about God. And everybody can believe about anything they want about God. But if somebody comes along and says, God is like this, and he applies to everybody, what happens? Oh boy, then you're in for it, right? The minute you say Jesus Christ claimed to be God, Jesus Christ proved he was God by his resurrection, and therefore Jesus Christ is God for everybody, oh, then you're mean-spirited and you're intolerant and you're dumb. Because who could believe something like that? And what happens is that, you know, and this comes from some pretty powerful sources. And even a lot of Christian churches are starting to back down. They're starting to give in on these main teachings, like the divinity of Christ and the Trinity. But you can't do that. You can't give up on those principal teachings. If somebody says, I understand everything about God, that's the person you want to stay away from. Why? Because they've put God into a little box. They've made him into what they think he should be. And they've made their own God. What does the word God mean? It means unlimited. It means without boundaries. Doesn't it only make sense that there are going to be things about God that we don't understand? Absolutely. At some point, we have to give God the respect and say, okay, God, you can only go so far in explaining yourself to us. And then we've got to humbly accept what you tell us about yourself. You know, there's something a little dangerous about the Plato God that a lot of people are making today. The God who will fit any shape and size and like or dislike. Yeah, people make this kind of God out because, you know, basically it doesn't have any effect on your life. You kind of live the way you want to live. And that's great when everything's going your way, right? You don't want to be inconvenienced by some God telling you, oh, you better not do that. But just as that God is very comfortable when you're feeling good and the money's good and everything's good, but that God is also useless when the bottom falls out, right? Right? Because what can that God do for you? If he's constantly changing from this to that, you can't trust him. You can't trust him to do anything for you. So be careful about that God of convenience, because when you need more than just convenience, when you need real help, then you need the God who is there, the living God. The God who came to earth in the person of Jesus Christ, and not only said he was God, but he proved he was God through his resurrection from the dead. But Jesus doesn't stop there. He talks, this is very interesting in verse 20. He says, for the Father loves the Son and shows him all he does. God's not a machine, is he? God's not this giant computer. The Father loves the Son and the Son loves the Father. John says that all the time. I've had a father. I have a father who loved me very much, loves me very much, and I loved him. That was a wonderful experience. My Father's love. I am a father, and I I'm able to love as a father and receive love from children. That is a wonderful experience. Now, I don't understand how the Father loves the Son in the Godhead, but I know that love is really important to me. I know my life would never be the same without it. So what does it tell me? It tells me that God is into relationships, doesn't He? It's not just about this has got to be done, that's got to be done. Okay, you got to take care of this, you got to take care of that. It's about beings. It's about relationships. And here's the neat thing about this. It's not only that the Father loves the Son and the Son loves the Father. Near the end of His ministry, Jesus said this in John chapter 14. This is at the bottom of page 6 in your worship folder. He says, whoever has my commands and obeys them, he is the one who loves me. Now listen to this. He who loves me will be loved by my Father. And I too will love him and show myself to him. We get in on that relationship with the Father and the Son. Now what is He telling us? If the spiritual relationships are important, your earthly relationships are important too. They're the most important thing in your life after your relationship with God. This is so important today because typically, and especially we men, we measure our self-worth, what we feel about ourselves, by what we do. And that's usually spelled out career. You talk to a guy, and what does he talk about? He talks about what he does, how much money he makes, how much he's accomplished. I mean, even when we do something silly at home, we make something at home, we do a home repair, and somebody comes over, what do? We show them what we did. Look at what I built, But that's the way we are. We're performance-oriented. And the sad thing is that the ladies are following suit more and more in our society. But for as important as work is, and you know how much I talk about the importance of hard work and Christians leading the way and being an example in hard work, that cannot be the source of our self-worth. And sometimes we get a little bit silly about it. We act like the world would fall apart if we weren't at our job. But what's the reality? Maybe there's one or two of us here that'll, when we retire, there'll be the world will stop for a minute. But for most of us, when we retire after 30 or 40 years, what's going to happen? Somebody else is going to take our place, and life's going to go on, and there won't be a blip on the radar. But that same thing is not true in regard to our relationships. You are a unique person, and God has placed you uniquely in a unique situation in the lives of people. And there is nobody that can touch these people's lives like you can. Nobody. Think about that. Think about what that means in your daily actions. Our God of relationships. Let's go on and talk about God's ultimate purpose to give people life. You remember Nicodemus? What did Jesus say to Nicodemus? You must be born again. Dave, in the first chapter of John, talked about how Christ is the life, and He came to bring life. This is a theme that John brings up over and over again, and in this case he says eternal life is a reality. He says, just as the Father raises the dead and gives them life, even so the Son gives life to whom He's pleased to give it. I tell you the truth. Whoever hears my words and believes Him who sent me has eternal life and will not be condemned. He has crossed over from death to life. It's so interesting. You compare the teachings of Jesus with the message of our culture. It's just total opposites, right? Jesus, it's all about life. It's all positive, and we're in a culture of death. From our science, which is founded on evolution, which depends upon death, to our TV and our radio. What are all our shows about? finally had to turn off CSI for the